Okay, so as a beginner, there are certain aspects of equipment you'll definitely need.
Right.
Let's start at the kind of the basics. You'll need a suit, whatever happens. So you've got, I mean, I started with this sort of suit, which is actually just a...
So it's like a jacket?
Just a jacket, a very basic jacket, which ties up at the bottom.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can get it elasticated or you can get it on a tie pull. I started with a tie pull, made a mistake of not tying up once, and you get a rather sore belly for the paint.
Okay, so they all went up inside the jacket.
Yes. Now, not everyone's going to do that, so don't worry about it, but people like me will. So I actually progressed from that to more like a suit. So, you know, a lot longer one, it covers down, right down to your ankles.
So like full overalls, basically.
Exactly. Then you have no worry. You have no worry about that. So really that comes down to personal preference as to what you know, how you want to work with the bees. I mean, for speed, you use a jacket because it's a lot easier, a lot quicker.
Rather than stepping into everything.
And it's a lot cooler as well.
And is the hood bit, I mean, they're different. Is there any reason for that, or is just
completely different? A lot of it comes down to personal preference. This is kind of rather traditional with the round, and it does keep the bees a little bit away from your face.
Right.
These, so-called the sheriff suit is what they're called. The sheriff design is such that you're actually a lot closer to the bees. So some people don't like it too much.
because you can hear it more? And
yeah.
Right.
But these tend to be kind of picking up a little bit more steam now. They seem to be used a lot more. I use this sort of style now. I prefer it to this. It feels a little bit more real for me.
Right.
But you have an option. There's no great advantage or disadvantage to all. It's just this seems to be a little bit more kind of fashionable now. This is a little bit more traditional. So.
Yeah, Miss Marple type thing.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly that. But so really, you've got your choice. You can your jackets. You've got your full suits. You've got your round. You've got
colour.
Your,
make any difference?
Again, very traditional. There seems to be a move now towards slightly more colourful. Bee suits. I mean, you can get them in them. This is like a khaki colour. You can get them in mushroom. Get them in lilac.
Really colourful. Mushroom or like pink.
Pink and powder blue. I've heard.
So
as well.
It has
no bearing. I mean, there is certain kind of semblances of bright. It's very, very bright. It can attract the insects a little bit. Slightly muted colours. It is a little bit easier. So, I mean, again, personal preference a little bit more. The other two kind of core products I would come on to, which you'll see every beekeeper suit, this funny little object.
I have to say, it looks like something that I'll be digging buttercups out of me paving with.
Yeah, I've never tried it, but it's exactly that. So a hive tool and a smoker, they're the two other core products. But the hive tool is like your friend. I mean, if you're going to go into a hive, this is what you need. It's got various kind of designs. This is a rather standard one. You've also got one which is called a J-shaped tool, which hasn't got this funny little edge on it. But really, in essence, it's used to open up the hive and manipulate the frames.
Right.
Because the bees will go in and they will glue everything down. They want to keep...
Right, so things won't just slide out easily?
No, not at all. And, you know, I mean, you can go in there and you can break it all off, but the bees are going to know about it. You know, all the vibrations and the banging and everything, they're going to know.
Not a good move.
No, so this is all really about trying to very gently manipulate and coerce the frames out. And because they've been stuck down, the bees want to keep everything wind tight and water tight, which is where propolis comes in, which is like bee glue, basically, in a nutshell. So you use this to move them around, you'll use this to hook in and underneath so you can lift it all up.
Nice and easily.
Absolutely. And
right. It's a nice bright colour.
yeah, I went for the brightest one possible because I tend to drop mine quite a lot. So really bright colour, if it gets hidden in the grass, you'll find it easily. Okay, so that's the hive tool. Now the next kind of friend of yours while you're tending the bees is a smoker.
Right.
I mean, generally this is kind of like the archetypal sign of being a beekeeper is having your a smoker lit, and it's lovely, and it really is lovely on a nice day to have your smoker lit and all the smoke coming out. But really, I mean, the idea of this is to use a certain sort of fuel, which you will put into the smoker, get it lit, the smoke will come out, and basically you will always smoke a hive before you go into it.
Right.
And
before you do any work to it.
Yeah, exactly. Because what it will make the bees kind of assume is that their hive, rather cruelly, is on fire. So they will rush back into their hive rather than coming out to attack you, and will go in and gorge themselves on honey. Basically, because they want to get out of the hive. If it's on fire, they want to get out. So that is what your smoker will do.
So that just makes them a bit more sedate. They're too busy doing something else rather than worrying about what you're doing. Yeah,
exactly that. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're beekeeping in the UK with a smoker or in Africa with burnt cow dung. That's what they'll use out in Africa. It's the same method.
Right.
Calms the bees down, makes them kind of concentrate on something else other than, crikey, there's someone going into my hive.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, as I said, you know, cow dung in Africa, I mean, we use a variety of different things. I mean, you could use just dried out twigs, for example, which you pick off the floor, and a lot of people tend to. I actually use this, which is like a cocoa shell.
Right, okay.
Basically.
We
And-
use that for mulch in the garden.
Well, there you are. I mean, you wouldn't know you use it for beekeeping as well, but it's all to do with the smoke that it emits. Because one of the biggest problems, like using kind of you know, dried twigs and everything, is that the smoke emitted is quite warm.
Okay, so
I never knew there was a warm smoke and a cold smoke. But you know, this smoke it burns well. It burns long. Because I can tell you that the last thing you want is going
it's
into
your
your
smoke
hive.
running out.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want. I mean, and it always seems to happen on the worst hives. Your smoker runs out midway through.
Right.
But with something like a cocoa shell, it burns for a long time and it emits quite a cool smoke. So not to alarm the bees too much, because that's again not what you really want to do. Okay, so we've got the core components so far: the suit, your smoker, hive tool.
Yep.
But then you've also got the other elements to look after. I mean, your fingers and your thumb, that's quite important. Your feet,
Right.
bizarrely. Trust me, with someone who's gets stung on their ankle quite a few times, you want to make sure that's all protected. But if we start on the gloves, I mean, you can have a variety of different gloves, as with everything in beekeeping. I, at the moment, tend to be using more kind of leather, quite supple gloves like this.
Oh, they are, aren't they? Almost like driving gloves, aren't they?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I have to say, I started with rubber gloves, but I mean, some people even just use just simple surgeon's gloves.
Really thin then.
Tiny, really, really thin. But I mean, a lot of experienced beekeepers prefer that because it means it's quite easy to feel what the bees are doing and understand the frames, and so you don't get clumsy with it.
Right.
A lot of beginner beekeepers tend to prefer much thicker gloves because they're so frightened about getting stung.
Stung. I'm with them there.
Yeah, and I am. I mean, I have a feisty hive, and so, you know, I knew that I'm going to get kind of stung quite a lot. So this actually does stop a sting.
Right.
So that's why I prefer to go to these. But, I mean, you know, I mentioned that I get stung quite a lot on the ankle, so, you know, the traditional welly boot, however fetching it is, also goes a long way.
Right. So you need to be tucking your trousers inside the wellies.
Yeah, I mean, some people just, you know, use regular trainers and tuck it in. But you get these certain bees, you've got like these guard bees and house bees and every sort of bee in the hive. You also get what we call ankle biters.
I think you're making it up now, James.
I swear I'm not. Well, I've seen them. But they literally will fly out of the hive and come at your ankles if you're not careful and you've upset them and you've kind of banged them a little few times.
Right.
So the welly comes in handy, and I've learnt that from experience. But as you said.
So basically all gaps, like sleeves, trousers, t-shirts, tucked in, sealed up.
Absolutely. And I mean, even the gloves, I mean, that's why they're so long, because they will come over your sleeve and protect you that way, because bees basically like dark, warm places, and they'll crawl there. You've then got other little extras like, for example, a bee brush.
Right.
It looks rather normal, doesn't it? But it's a very kind of soft kind of hair to it.
Okay, yeah, it is, isn't it?
And basically this is just to make sure the bees are off. So when you're putting frames back in or boxes back on, there's always little stragglers which are around the edge, and just, you know, you don't want to kill them if you can avoid it. So you just kind of brush them off
Right.
and put it back on. So you've got the bee brush, you've got things like queen cages. Now, there are various different sorts of queen cage, I have to say, but this is the one that I use personally, which you use it to mark the queen.
How?
Well, you basically guide her in here, you kind of, you know, hurry her along, get into the spit, and you just use this little plunger very carefully to push her up into it, trap her into this little kind of, you know, matrix, I suppose, get a marker pen, and just dab her abdomen.
Oh, so she gets like a little crisscrossy on her
Exactly. Well, no, it's literally just this little ball,
spot.
and it just helps you to identify her
Okay.
into the hive. But there are various different sorts, but you've got to be very careful. So as a beginner, you don't necessarily need this, but then there are other things like drawing pins you might want as well, just to mark out where the queen was, and little things like that, but not a necessity. But one bit of advice is, if you start, is get a bee box to put everything in.
Is that just a normal box that you can lid on it?
Literally that. So you can take it to the hives, because
Okay.
the worst thing is that when you get there and you're running out of fuel, for example, backup fuel and all this lot, so it's always worthwhile. So that's the sort of equipment you'd need just to run a regular inspection. Then you've got to think about other equipment, like for honey extraction, for example, where, you know, you can either buy it yourself. You can buy honey extractors, decapping knives, you name it. You would be surprised at the amount of kit you can get, but just hire it from your local station is one way of doing it. You know, it's very, very cheap to do.
To keep the costs down.
Exactly. And then probably one of the largest expenses you've got to kind of think about is your hive.
The bees need somewhere to live. Yeah, I've forgotten about that bit with all the others.
Yeah, and there's quite a variety of them, believe me. So, you know, it's probably best not to kind of discuss it here. It's probably best to see them in person because there's quite a lot of difference between each of them, really. And also to discuss where your hive should live. You know, some people just think they can plonk it outside the back door. It doesn't really work like that, I'm afraid. So we'll go and discuss that at the same time, shall we? Hi Will, so I understand you've been keeping bees for an awful long time.
A fair while now, yeah.
Good, so you will probably understand the importance, I hope, of swarm control to a beekeeper.
It's very important, particularly in the early season and right the way through the honey harvest. Without swarm control, you could lose half your bees and therefore half your honey crop. But also, from a socially responsible point of view, particularly for urban beekeepers, you don't want to wind up the neighbours by a swarm of bees descending upon the back door of their house or something or other.
Trust me, I know. I've been there, done that. But so the elements of a swarm, I mean, what actually happens to your swarm of bees when that goes? I mean, from a beginner's perspective, I suppose I've got to know about it.
The run-up to a swarm is basically your colony of bees has built up, it's filled the box, it's filled your hive, there's no real room for them to develop, grow further, and the queen substance, which is the pheromone that the queen releases that makes all the bees in the colony feel, yeah, this is a nice place to live, is, well, there's so many bees, there's not enough queen substance to go around, so there's a little bit of disharmony, not aggression or narkiness in the bees, it's just they're not happy where they are. They're feeling, really, we're a bit cramped, I think it's time to move on, guys. And at that point what they'll do is they will draw out a special cell called a queen cell, and they will force the queen to lay into that cell an egg, and they'll probably do that 2 or 3 times over the course of a day.
Yeah.
And those cells will be drawn out and will become queens. At the point at which those cells are capped, that's when the old queen goes, oh right, I've got the hint now, I'm off.
Okay.
And any time from when those cells are capped to up to a day or so before the new queens emerge, the queen will leave the hive, and most of the bees in the hive will follow her. And they'll do a couple of circuits of the hive usually. During that circuits, half of them will return back to the hive, and the rest will go off with the queen. And that is the swarm.
If I'm a beginner beekeeper, let's just assume I've got my hive all together, it's working fine. When's the first point that I get worried?
When you start to see queen cells, if this is happening very early in the season, then I would suggest that potentially it's a lack of space rather than a lack of queen substance. So perhaps stick another, put another super underneath the queen so that it go on to brood and a half, or potentially another brood box if you want to, if you're using particularly prolific variety of bees.
Provide more space.
Provide more space early on in the season, definitely. And assuming you've seen the queen, remove that queen cell. Don't immediately remove queen cells. It's one of the first mistakes beekeepers do at the beginning, is they see a queen cell, fear, and they pull the queen cell out. Now, that potentially could be the worst mistake of their career, on the basis that the queen may have died. The queen may have been damaged, or may have stopped laying, may have come to the end of her useful life. Particularly if it's a queen collected from a swarm, because you've got no idea of how old the queen is. So she may be 5 years old when you collected her.
So early in the season, more space. More space. Later on in the season, kind of...
Later on in the season, when they get a bit more keen on producing these queen cells, you see more and more of them. That's when I would look to do an artificial swarm.
I've heard this term quite a lot. I mean, and that you need extra kit available at your disposal?
Look, most people, when they're starting up beekeeping, will potentially they will have bought a nucleus of bees, and they'll have their nute box that they had the bees arrive in originally. So that's really handy. So you can do your artificial swarm. And an artificial swarm, you take the existing queen and 3-4 frames of brood from the hive, and put that into the nucleus hive and move that away.
Right.
It doesn't have to be miles away, just 3 foot away from the previous colony. Some of the bees from there, the flying bees, will go back to the old colony, and that's fine.
Right.
But the queen will exist with the young workers that are generally working, and that will become a second colony. That primary colony, those queen cells will develop into queens. The queens will fly, mate, or one of them will fly, mate, and return to the colony.
Because if I'm right, it's my understanding that the queens, they do have stings themselves.
Oh yes, most definitely.
And basically the queen will come out and a queen will only sting another queen.
Yes.
So is it the first queen that comes out or the strongest queen that will come out and sting the others?
Generally speaking, I have seen when queen cells have emerged, and I've caught the hive the day the queens have come out, I have actually found 2 or even sometimes 3 virgin queens in a colony running around chasing each other. The last one standing is the one that gets the chance to leave the hive, mate,
right,
and then return to carry on the good works of the previous queen.
It kind of follows suit with what traditionally the swarm is all about, which is swarm is all about keeping the colonies alive, isn't it? That's how bees have managed to live for 150 million years.
It's just the natural, it's just the way bees reproduce. A strong colony of bees would naturally send out 2 or 3 swarms in a season.
So rather than something to be, I mean, really feared, which I think a lot of people do fear, a bee swarm, I think it's one of these things which people see in trees and get frightened about. Really, I mean, swarms should be celebrated because it's a way of colonies keeping on going. But I mean, from a member of the public's perspective, I mean, it's my understanding that bee swarms are actually probably bees in a very placid and docile state. Is that fair to say?
The last thing a swarm of bees does before it leaves the hive is to fill itself up with as much honey as it possibly can to carry and find a new home.
Going back to this beginner standpoint, let's assume that I've made the decision that I can't afford the money to go and buy a nucleus of bees. I've made the decision that I want to collect a swarm.
Right.
What would you recommend as a process that a beginner beekeeper should follow in order to do that?
As a beginner beekeeper, first of all, I want to emphasise responsibility. Okay. Now, if you've got other beekeepers around you, then you've got to seriously look about whether collecting a swarm and bringing it into a communal apiary is a good idea from a disease point of view. But assume that you're going to keep your colony of bees on your own in your back garden, not surrounded by other bees and beekeepers. Great. So you've gone out, you've got your swarm.
But I mean, how do you get that? I mean, is it a case of you talk to your local association and say, right, I'm very interested in getting a swarm of bees? That's essentially the starting point, is it?
That's the starting point. I will be very honest in the fact that I think that a beginner going out to a swarm of bees for the first time and trying to collect it for themselves, as I've had some very, very interesting phone calls over this season where beginner beekeepers have gone out and tried to collect the swarm. I've had this phone call of this sort of crazed beekeeper trying to collect their first swarm. How do I do it?
It doesn't really work, I imagine.
And sometimes it's not quite as simple as the books say.
I mean, which arguably basically says you have your box, you put it under a tree branch where the swarm might be, tap the bees in, and they fall magically into your box perfectly, and then you leave them for a bit.
Bees do very much in the swarm state behave almost like a thick liquid.
So theoretically, it's very easy, but practically
theoretically
not.
it's easy. But I mean, say that swarm of bees doesn't decide to land on a tree or a branch or a shrub, or it decides to land on a gravel driveway.
That'd be nice and easy. I see what you mean.
Yeah, how do you get your hive underneath it to tap on the... You know, you've got to be a little bit flexible. If you've had a swarm reported to you, find your mentor if they're available to go out and collect the swarm with you. Or hope for the best that somebody in your local association says, well, I've got a swarm, I'll come and collect your brood box, we'll fill that with bees and put the bees in the box. I have a belief as a beekeeper that if it is remotely possible, collect the bees in the box you intend them to stay in for the first 4 or 5 weeks of you looking after them at the very least. Because every time you move the bees from the branch to the box, that's stressing the bees once. From the cardboard box to the sheet, twice. From the sheet to the hive, 3 times. Yeah. I would personally put the bees from the cardboard box straight in the hive.
You just do in the box it comes out. I mean, it's fascinating really because I mean I suppose as the beekeeping year progresses, swarm control becomes key in several stages throughout that year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as a beginner, then I suppose you've got to factor in if you're going to get a swarm of bees for you. That's one element of a swarm control. You've then got obviously how your bees are reacting within the hive is another element of swarm control. So really. Factoring, you know, having a knowledge, an in-depth knowledge of swarm is very, very important. Okay, that's great. Well, thanks, Will. That's
good.
Very interesting. Okay, so
This is the exciting bit,
this
isn't
is
it?
a really exciting
We've
bit.
got in here no bees.
Just about, I hope.
Yeah.
We'll probably find a little straggler in here in a minute.
Okay.
But okay, before we start extracting and using all the equipment, let me just go through a little bit about how to extract the honey in the first place. Now, I've got here 2 examples of actual honey extractors. Now, one is an electric one is a manual one.
Right.
The manual one really builds up your biceps.
So this is the manual one.
Yes. Now, if I just lift up this lid in a second, there we are. You can see, sorry, a little clasp. If you lift up this lid, you've got little segments in here where you put your frames of honey.
Okay.
All right. Now they all point in to the actual centre, and what happens is as you're spinning, this little contraption on the side, as you will, once you've uncapped the honey, all the honey will splatter out on the sides. All right. But, and it is a big but, you are using a lot of manual labour. So as you're using this, you can't be doing anything else.
Okay. So it doesn't saves on electric, but not time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a little amateur beekeeper with perhaps 1 or 2 hives, that it's fine.
Right.
If you're a little bit more kind of ground scale, 5, 10, 20 hives, whatever it may be, electrical ones are ideal. All right, now this extractor itself is exactly the same size. I mean, it's still a 6-frame extractor. You can get 20-frame plus extractors, which are just monumental, great big beasts. But I mean, ostensibly the same. So you take off these covers.
So you've got the same grid thing in there that goes round, and you slot your frames in there.
Exactly, and the really nice thing about this, you've got variable speed. Okay. So that is just your biceps. This is a little motor system which just speeds it up.
And would you, I mean, they look quite big. Would you buy one of those, or?
Yeah, you can do. I mean, it'll set you back a few £100 if you want to do that. So
Right.
it is quite expensive, but it's one of the advantages of being with an association. I mean, for example, I can hire this for £10 with my association. So it's it's a bargain really.
And you're only using it what, once, twice a year?
Twice a year if you're really lucky. So it makes sense.
And then you haven't got to look after it and store it anywhere, have you?
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about it, because they are pretty big and ugly. So okay, well. What we'll do, let me just explain a little bit about the equipment that you need in terms of to uncap your honey, because before they go in here, they've got to be uncapped. Now, do you remember we were talking...
Okay, like the wax capping over each of the
That's a bad
cells.
example. Yeah, this little bit of wax here, it's got to come off.
Uh-huh.
Now, we're not going to put this one in because obviously there's a lot on there, so what I'll do, if I just select...
The best
one, so I'm not going to do that one. There might not be anywhere in this one. No, that might be enough. No, we won't use that one. Put that one down for the time being. Let's have a look.
Oh, that looks good.
That one all right. We'll do this side. So all you just got to do is you just got to take off the top layer. Now there are many ways you can do this. Now, one way, which is a very simple way, is using this. This is called like an uncapping fork. Now these prongs at the top, all they just do, you're just lifting them out. So you're just lifting the actual capping off. If I just do this here, and this is this very, very expensive contraption I've got here.
Plastic bowl.
Absolutely, and a little bit of wood. So you just balance this on this like here, and all you're doing is you're literally. A lot of people just scrape down. A lot of people tend to do a little bit more care, and what they will do is they just lift off the cap. So they're coming like that, and just lift off, and you can see.
It's quite messy, isn't it?
Unbelievably messy. But you can start to
You can now see why you've got this covering everywhere.
I would get shot by my wife if I had it everywhere else. So, and then you just strip it off. So you're just come in, and just take off that top layer. It's off.
Right.
All right. So I'll just do. I'll do a little bit of this one, and then I will give it to you to give it a go. So it's a little bit of a kind of a taxing job. This one. Do you want to have a little go with that and just get the kind of a intensity? You don't have to press too hard.
Oh no.
And just lift off. There you go. Now, this little pink bowl that you have here, it's still quite important because a lot of people still like the wax cappings.
Oh, okay. What do you use that for then?
Well, people still like to put them on their toast because the wax actually melts off. Some people chew them. It's a variety of different things. The glory of having the the honey and the wax and everything that comes with it is that literally everything that is a product of the beehive is usable.
And is it true that they say if you suffer from hay fever, you should eat honey from your area because the pollen is likely to be in there, so you're likely to be a bit more immune to the hay fever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these little wax cappings that you've got on here, the consistency of these is such that it's a combination of wax and the pollen of local. So in actual fact, if you are a hay fever sufferer, rather than having the honey like this, which is extracted, a lot of the hay fever sufferers tend to have the cut comb honey, which we'll come on to a little bit later, where you have the wax cappings and the honey at the same time. Now, what we need to do with this...
Right, handing back to you.
Lovely, thank you so much. Now, there was nothing on the other side, was there? No, and there's actually nothing in there, so there's no honey, so I'm not so worried about putting it in. If there was honey which was uncapped, I wouldn't put it in. So all we just do, we just literally just deposit this. You can see at the bottom there's a little ring. And I just stick this in.
I see, right.
All right, and so then you just fill it up with all the frames that you have. Okay, all done. So it's nice and easy. Now, slightly
Show me the fast way.
a little bit of a crude way now, and this is what a lot of people tend to do, which tends to get a little bit more wax in here. You get a wax and combination, but it doesn't matter because we're going to strain it later. So what we just do, you literally just dig in, and you just open up like that. Okay, and you can see that you're doing exactly the same thing, but what you're doing, you are leaving a little bit of the wax in there, which isn't as good, but it's a hell of a lot quicker. Just make sure that's all out.
So if you were going to be entering your honey for the local fate and you wanted to win, you would do it the slower way.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this is the second way of using it with actual, with what they call the what are they called? Wax comb. So just stick that in like that. So it's a little bit messier, but it doesn't matter. It's going to come off. Right, there we are. So
loaded.
All fully loaded, all evenly spaced. I've made sure that if I've got like a half frame of honey, I've matched it as well. Now we just put the tops back on, making sure that's in place. All right.
Right.
And then we go. So if you want, do you want to have a little look?
Have a look.
Let's go.
I'm not going to get splattered, am I?
I hope not. Right, we'll start it off really slow, and you can see how it starts off.
Right, yeah.
Now I wouldn't start it off particularly fast anyway. I'd just start to pick up the speed gradually so that the frames get used to it.
God, you can smell the honey.
Now, you can start
Oh,
to
I
see
can
they
start
are.
seeing it whipping out.
See, it's almost like a spider weaving a web.
It's almost like candy floss coming out, like spun sugar, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
lovely.
it looks like.
Wonderful. And now you really get the smell
Yeah.
coming through. Now, what will happen from here, as this kind of picks up and more honey gets splattered out, it'll start to just drop down and it will gather in the bottom of the actual of the extractor. And I did make sure that the little gate at the bottom was closed. So
I was going to say, so there's a drain at the bottom where we get it all out, or
yes,
at the end.
Yes.
Okay.
Fortunately. Now you can see it really gathering up there now. Now what I'm just going to do,
Let's put the top on.
if you could just hold that down there like that for me. So we'll leave this now for kind of like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so we're now going to just take this off, and you can start to see the honey at the bottom. Can you see it?
Yes, there's quite a big puddle at the bottom.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's where it gets really satisfying,
Is it?
as you start to see what's been going on. It's lovely. And it's almost as nice as when you take that first taste, and you can kind of taste the flowers around. It really is a nice thing. So what it's done is it's taken, essentially, honey from one side of the cell out.
Because it's
Going one way.
one way.
So what we now just got to do, and I'll start on this side, is just literally take them out of that little hole that is, and turn them over.
So another 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, another 3 or 4 minutes on that. All right, should we see what we got? Let's have a look. Right. Oh,
Wow.
there we go.
Quite a good puddle down there.
That's not bad, is it?
Fantastic.
Okay.
So these, you're saying you're going to put those frames back in to the beehives,
Yeah.
and they'll clean them up, eat the honey,
Absolutely.
and start using them.
Yeah, these are now termed as what they call wet frames, and the bees just lick them clean. And what they do, they basically just clear it all out. I mean, you can see all the honey's now pretty much disappeared. All right, so that's all gone. That's nice. It's a nice clear frame. So we pop this back in. This is where it can get really messy. So you've got to prepare your area.
Is it on your side?
Right. So let's stick them all back in. And then all I'll do is, I mean, tomorrow morning I'll pop these back on the hive, and the bees will love it. So.
And I guess, while you're spinning the honey, you can start getting ready for other, putting it in, sterilising jam jars and generally getting ready for the next bit.
Yeah, that's the good thing about having an electrical one. It just allows you to do other things at the same time. So, it almost allows you to work independently without, any other help and things like that. So, it's a real advantage. But yeah, it's come up all right, this. Okay, the next step, what we're going to do, once I've done this, is we will be lifting this up onto the counter, and we will then be preparing just like a big honey pot, basically, underneath it. And we will pass the honey which is in the bottom of there. And you can see there's little bits in there at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's not the cleanest of honey. So we've got to filter it. Because it's still got tiny little bits of wax in there. We need to make sure it's filtered out. Now this really helps on a warm day.
Right.
Because it becomes more runny, but it'll go through these. Right, okay. 2 sieves. And you'll be able to see this is a little bit of a slightly wider sieve.
Much coarser than that one's quite fine.
Yeah. You can do it many ways. I mean, you can use 2 sieves if you want to. I mean, other people just use basically just a straining cloth.
Right.
Which is a muslin essentially.
Cloth, yeah.
I tend to prefer this. Now, these actually aren't a perfect fit for my honey pot, but it doesn't matter. You can just hold it over and it'll just slowly
it must be very slow, knowing how thick honey is, draining through.
Well, not if it's runny enough, you're all right. It's when it's really thick honey, that's when you struggle.
Uphill battle.
But right, so let's just put that out. Sorry. Right, now we need to put this all the way up here. Now where's the, we've got what they call the honey gate.
There.
Here we go. Now if I just unplug this, just in case it gets caught, and I should hopefully, lift up. Yeah, it looks like, it's got a lovely smell, I'll tell you. Honey pot, which is, I think, there we go. Right, now, this basically goes underneath. All right, and this will drop out of the honey gate, what they call it, into the sieves, which we've got in here. Slightly rougher one, slightly finer one. And
it should go out really quickly, do you think?
Fingers crossed. I hope it's runny enough. Now, because it's not a massive amount, we might have to tip this forward, but if you just hold it over the top there like that, I'll just undo this little gate.
Don't miss.
No, I hope not.
Oh, look!
There we go. It's quite a
quite thick.
Quite thick honey, yeah. Well, a lot of people do gently heat their honey, especially if they're working with, and they know they're working with quite thick honey, and that will it'll just warm it up, make it a little bit more runny. And they were in quite a warm kitchen because it's got a little bit cooler during the day. I'm just going to stop that. How's that in terms of weight for you?
That's all right.
Is that all right? This is where you really see the difference in your honey, because obviously some honey is so fine. I'll just move this back. Just leave that little bit at the bottom.
Let's see, it's going through. Wow. So this could take quite some time.
It might well do now, yes. Yeah, it's just starting to pool underneath.
Oh, the first drop at the bottom of the bucket.
So I suggest we just leave it half an hour, just let it filter through, and then we'll just come back and we'll just open up the gate and it will be bottled.